So today, I think this is already our. I know that sounds crazy. This is already our fourth class, um, and we're a little behind. So we're gonna try to zoom along today, even though we're starting late. So as I mentioned in the beginning, every class we're going to start with the the timeline. So we're still around the end of the Revolutionary War period. I'm about to finish that period. So we had two periods. See if it opens up. If it opens up, I'll share it. There were two periods. Period number one was the beginning, 1654 till about the revolution. And the second period is roughly the period of the revolution till about 1820. So that's what we're going to try to get as far as we can today till about then. So just for those of you, here is our timeline. Just to remind, so we're this period, and now we're here. We're focusing on this period, present at the founding, 1776 to 1820. That's what we're going to do today. Hopefully, finish that, and even maybe begin the next period from 1820 on. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the person that was involved in the homework, and a very important person in American Jewish history, and that was Gershom Sheshas. Let me open up the module. So we're still in module 3. If you don't know, there's a website called Genie, which is genealogy, and so it's just cute. His name was Rabbi Gershom Mendes Seixas, that's how you pronounce it last time. And there are nice pictures of him. Here's one of them. It's actually a better picture where he was a younger person. Here's just a little bit overview of his timeline, where he was. He was born in New York. And what's important, the reason it's important is because he's like the first American born. Again, you'll notice he's not a rabbi. He's a reverend. The difference is reverend is the term used for people who are serving in Jewish, as a functionary, a chazan, a leader, a reader. But a rabbi is someone who's ordained and is learned and knows all the basic information. There were no rabbis in America at this point. There won't be for another 30, 40, 50 years. So for another 30, 40, 50 years, there were just people who were educated, knowledgeable, leaders, and they were called reverends and not rabbis. That's just a distinction that's made. So who is this person? Why is he important? Does anyone, for those of you who did the homework, anyone have anything to say or what they learned? Anybody? I just see Amos. Anyone else here? Okay. Catherine, you want to say something? Someone? No?
Yes, I was opening the page you just opening.
Right.
So I was trying to Google and get some information about him.
Okay.
That's all I found. The page that you opened it up right now.
Oh. So what's very interesting about him is that he actually, was okay. So let's look. Okay, for those of you who did the homework, great, and for those who didn't, I guess I'm preempting or I'm helping you out here. So what's very interesting about Reverend Seixas is that he chose to be a patriot. Now I know that's like, wow, okay, now that we're living today and America won the war, that's like, okay, obviously, but it wasn't so obvious. And the point of the homework in the video was that it wasn't so simple for the Jewish community in 1776 to decide where their loyalties were. And we spoke about this last time, where Isaac Turo, father of Judah Turo, who we'll learn a little more later, was a loyalist. He was loyal to the British crown. And again, it's not crazy. If you were, again, most of the people in America at some points, were English citizens. And the fact that there were people, the colonies, who wanted to revolt, to have a revolution, and break off from the crown, was revolutionary, to use that word in other contexts. So the fact that the New York community chose to flee and not stay with the British. Again, it wasn't so simple. Anyone here from Brooklyn? Yeah. So you know Verrazano Bridge, Fort Hamilton,
Of
right?
course.
Of course. So that fort, that was that was a famous battle. It's called the Battle of Long Island, actually, because if you think about it, Brooklyn is just one Long Island with Long Island, and that's it. Again, I'm not going to play Hamilton again, but for those of you who've seen Hamilton, right, you know that it was that's where the American Revolution almost ended. It almost ended right then and there, where the troops were almost cut off. The English actually almost won, and then there would be no revolution. So the point of the homework was to point out that there was definitely an opinion amongst the Jewish members of the congregation of Shearith Israel to just swear loyalty to the king, stay in America, stay in New York, and everything will be great. But their leader, Reverend Seixas, was he believed in the cause, and that was the homework, to find those quotes and what they put in his words in his mouth, the quotes of being loyal to being a patriot, supporting the revolution while still being a Jew in America. So that's why that was the point of the homework, to bring out that point. Now, what's interesting is, I think I mentioned this last time, if you actually want to visit his grave, you can visit Gershom Seixas's grave. It's remember I pointed out that this Shearith Israel. It's in the middle of Manhattan. Oh, here's another picture of him, by the way. This is what he looked like. These are other pictures of him. Again, there's no cameras, so obviously these are portraits. He looks like a young man. He was wearing. This is what the reverends or the leaders, the Jewish leaders would wear. And this is his grave. You can actually go visit it. It's in Manhattan. So if you're interested, it's on 55 St. James Place. That's what do you call it? Lower East Side. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that about him also was also interesting is that he was honored. He was honored for his loyalty. He was actually a speaker at George Washington's inauguration. Now, why is that a big deal? Because again, at this stage, there are very, very few Jews in America. They're not a big community. Like today, you have a Jewish community in New York is very big, or America. The Jews are like tiny percentage, maybe a few hundred people. Shearith Israel was not like this unbelievable congregation. It was a tiny little house, and the fact that he was honored to be the speaker or one of the speakers at the inauguration was a testament to George Washington, including all religions. It's a testament to the loyalty, the patriotism of the Jewish community and specifically their leader. And it was a testament to the fact that anti-Semitism was not an issue. Having a Jewish person, a Jewish rabbi, leader speak at George Washington's inauguration, which again led to and was related to the fact that Washington himself was so welcoming and accepting in that famous letter to Moses Seixas, same last name, relative, of Gershom Seixas that we saw last week. Okay, that is sort of, we're going to go a little. So that's an important person you have to know, and it also brings out a lot. He was also, by the way, just as an aside, he was one of the trustees of Columbia, or King's College as that was called at the time. So that's also an important thing. I'd like to just go on to another important.
Professor, may I ask you?
Of course.
Yes. In the movie, why did Gershom decide?
So I wanted to talk about another famous person, only because that it's pretty obvious that whenever I tell people I teach this class, they say, "Do you teach about?" And they mention this name. So the man's name is Haim Solomon. Here is from the book. This is Haim Solomon. There's a statue of him here with Robert Morris and George Washington. Here's a little historical. I think I have a better one. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if I have a better. I'm pretty sure I have a better image. But if not, So Haim, let's just, while I'm looking, let me just tell you who he was. I'm going to go introduce it for a second also. If you're a new country, how do you, today, if you were starting a war today, how do you pay for a war? Well, that's obvious, right? How do you pay for a war? Anyone know how you pay for a war? Anyone?
Taxes?
Taxes, yeah. So why are taxes not a good idea back then? Let's not forget that taxes was the reason that we were breaking off from England, right? So taxes are not always a great thing to start, and no one liked taxes, especially in the 1770s. That's for sure. So that's first the reason why taxes are not a great way. And second, there's a bigger problem. Like in England today, they're switching the money around. So all the money till now had Queen on it. Now they're gonna have the King on it. But if you're an American and you're breaking off from England, what money do you use? Right? If you're gonna start your own country, and again, there's two problems. You don't have money. People want, and back especially in the 1700s, money wasn't as available today. People had goods.
So that's how they paid for things, trading.
Trading, right. But if you don't collect taxes, so you have nothing to trade with. And so imagine, and this is one of the major problems. Again, we can't go into this, but again, I refer you to the movie Hamilton, where a lot of these, the movie or the play, right? The Congress couldn't get money because you needed credit. So, and this is a topic in and of itself. We'll get back to this, but one of the major anti-Semitic charges throughout the generations is that Jews profit from war. Because the only way to wage a war is to spend a lot of money. I don't know if
that's a big one, though. No, that's a big one, though. That's
big one.
That's a big one that that people say.
Yes.
Like I hear it all the time. Yeah.
And the problem is there's a kernel of truth. What's the kernel of truth? Wars are expensive, very expensive. And today it's crazy expensive. One missile is millions of dollars, but war is crazy expensive. So the way you do it is you spend a lot of money, but to spend a lot of money, you have to have a lot of money. If you don't have a lot of money, you have to borrow money. So throughout history, when the kings waged war, they needed money, they were borrowing money from the people who lent money. Traditionally, those were the Jews. So, and whichever side wins, they'll make money because you conquer or however you make your money from war, and then you pay back your banker. Now the banker made money technically off your war. So one of the famous anti-Semitic claims that always exists is that Jews profit from war. People do profit from war. People profit, from car loans, and bankers profit from anytime they lend money. But because Jews were lending money, and because Jews were lending money specifically to kings and princes, and they were waging war when they won. So, and we'll see this a lot when we deal with the end of the 1800s and 1900s. And when we deal with the Holocaust, one of the main reasons, and we're very lucky by the way in this class, a documentary just came out, like literally this week, about the Holocaust. So we will have, we're going to watch something in this class that just came out. But jumping ahead, one of the reasons that most Americans weren't the biggest fans of the Jews, again, we know today is the Holocaust, but from a World War II perspective, they don't want to involve the war. And there was always a claim, the Jews are going to profit from the war. That was something that President Roosevelt was very nervous about, which is, again, I'm really jumping ahead of our time. So imagine you're living in the 1770s, 1780s, right, when the war's going on, and you're George Washington, and you want to win a war, so you need money. So, okay, someone has to trust you. Someone has to give you money on the trust that one day you'll win and pay them back. It's not so simple. So one of the main people in America who helped raise money, advance money, give money to the George Washington and his army so that they could have supplies, so they could win, and trusted that they would get paid back, was a man by the name of Haim Solomon. I have a better picture. I have a better picture somewhere in my notes. So hold on before I share a screen. Give me 1 second if I can find it. I don't know why my notes are. Again, I'm not home, so it's a little bit. Let's see if I can find it. Should be a handout. Give me 1 second. What do you have to do? Nope, wrong thing. No, not that. Okay, we're doing really good today. Okay, here it is. Okay, here's just here's an article. He called him the revolution's indispensable financial genius. Whether it's true or not is either he's a genius or not, and this is the famous statue. I don't know why I have a better picture of it. It's George Washington with Robert Morris, who was also the Secretary of Finance in the war, and Haim Salomon. There is a legend, whether it's true or not, that he financed the Battle of Yorktown, but it's irrelevant. Whether it's true or not, the point is that the legend exists, means that that's how, in people's eyes, he was the financier. It's just interesting. We had said that almost all the Jews of America at this point were of Spanish Portuguese origin. Haim Salomon was actually of German origin. The reason that's relevant is because many of the soldiers working for the British were Hessian. Hesse is the area of Germany, and many of the soldiers were Hessian. I mean, they were hired soldiers, mercenaries, whatever, lack of a better term. When Haim Salomon was captured, that means he was captured by the British. Things looked very bad, but he spoke German, and so did the soldiers who were English, but they were actually working for the Hessian, and he convinced them to let him out. So he not only was he good, he was lucky, which is always something important that you need in life. So he was actually captured. He was held captive out on Long Island. That's where the British had a stronghold, and that's where their prisons and their prison ships were. If you were in Nassau County in the south, like if you were in 5 towns, and you looked out your window, the water, you would probably see a good old British warship with prisoners on it, or somewhere on Long Island. And Haim Salomon was captured, and he was held as a prisoner. And because of his ability to speak the right language, he was able to get out, which is great. Good for him. Oh, I think I found the picture. If you give me 10 seconds. I think I did. Yeah, here it is. Here's a better picture. I found it. Okay. This is what this is in Philadelphia. This is the statue, George Washington, Robert Morris, and Haim Salomon. This is a tribute to him. Okay, so I actually found the actual good picture. At least that. Okay, so that's something, and the reason I mentioned, as I pointed out, is it's just one of those names you have to know. And if you take this class and you don't know this name, they're like, oh my gosh, like I didn't do a good job. There's one other thing, if I could find it really quick, if you give me 10 seconds, I'm going to try to find it. If I don't, it's also okay. But it would be nice to see it. It would be nice to see it. And it's not looking great. Why is it not? One, I think it's in this one. I'm going to scroll really quickly. Sorry, you have to. What I wanted to show you is if I could find it. Oh, here it is. I found it. Look at that. Okay, so if you take a look here, this is what a loan document would look like. I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit. So it says here, it's hard to see. You see it says $100 there. And this is the 14th day of December, I think it says. It's hard for me to read. 1780. 90 days to get paid back. Paid to the order of Haim Salomon. So this is right at the honor of Ben Franklin, all the Treasury of Loans. This was the only way that the American government could raise money. That they would, it's a promissory note, and they said, listen, give us money now, like a bond, or like you invest your money and you get paid back. And you had to have a lot of faith in America to do that. And that's Haim Salomon. And this is, by the way, this is the actual newspaper we spoke about last time. This is the newspaper with George Washington's letter, the Congregation of Newport in 1790. This is the actual what it looked like, the actual newspaper. And we'll get back to this in a second. So let's just conclude these two important people, Gershom Seixas and Haim Salomon. Let's conclude. The point is that these two men represented Jewish leaders, one a reverend, one a finance leader, who believed in the cause. And again, as Amos pointed out, that's America won. So, yay! But if they would have lost, we would obviously want to be talking about them. But the point is the fact that we won. They believed in it, and clearly, in many ways, it was their Judaism, which could have also been a source of peril. It was their Judaism that propelled them to believe in this experiment of revolution. And Haim Salomon, Gershom Seixas, has a wonderful life afterwards. As I said, speaking at George Washington's inauguration, leader of Columbia. Haim Salomon, unfortunately, did not have the same because he actually never left debt. He owed a lot of people money. He never survived the financial burden of the Revolutionary War. Excuse me. Okay, so that's sort of those two important people. There's another important person, but we're gonna actually skip ahead already, even though there's a lot to do. We're a little behind, so we're gonna skip ahead. I think we did everything we really wanted to do from this, but so we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so to get to the next part of the class, we need to sort of set up what was going on. So imagine you're living in 1800, you're living in America as a Jewish person. There's not much going on. There's a few hundred people, scattered, as we said, in a few colonies, Philadelphia, New York, a little bit to the south. That's it. In theory, wouldn't be a crazy person if you said, you know what, this is not sustainable. This is not going to continue on. But what we're going to see is that for a number of reasons, history, like always, has its way of surprising us. History has a way of bringing in new events, and that changed a lot. So there is a person I want to introduce, but we have to set up what was going on, and sort of from a historical perspective. This is just we'll take a historical step back for a second. And again, as I said, I don't really like talking politics, but it's something we have to know about when we deal with politics, about human psychology. Humans' psychology, especially when it comes to governments, don't like change. Everyone wants to change, and everyone thinks that the current government or the way things are running might not be great. But people want to change, and there are people who want radical change. Radical change is not acceptable to most people. So, and again, I'm not commenting on which president, so I'm not saying a specific person, but you all know who, or the different people I'm referring to, is that the past quite a number of years in America, 16 something years in America, there have been presidents who represented a very specific type of change or newness. And then there's been the next election was a backlash. So, and again, both ways. There are people on both sides, and not everyone likes that new guy. And then they pick this other new guy, and then a lot of people don't like that new guy. And there's a lot of back and forth. The early 1800s had that in America, and it's called the Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening was, why second, we'll leave for another time. But what that means was America, to establish America, was very liberal, was very anti-religion. As he pointed out, Thomas Jefferson wasn't the most religious guy. Thomas Paine was not religious at all. The Age of Enlightenment, the Age of Reason, all of that, which contributed to this new idea, throw away the monarch, we hate the monarch, we're new, we're all smart, we're going to come up with natural laws and natural ideas. That's great. The problem with that is many people are religious, and many people felt that was too far away from religion. So what they did was, in America, there was a movement called the Second Great Awakening. So you have to know, Second Great Awakening. What that means is that the American people awoke to religion again. It means they're like, wait a second, we love religion. And like all backlashes, when you awake to a religion, you like, just to give an example, right? And again, without talking politics, and again, I'm not here to say yes or no. There is no question that President Trump was elected as a backlash to all the change of the Obama years. But it didn't just go back to where it was before. It was like a full backlash, like full on, MAGA or whatever you want to call it. And then you could make the case now it's the opposite, that there's certain ideas of woke culture is a backlash against the Trump's era's, pushing too far to conservatism. This is a very normal cycle when people are pushed one way or the other in their in a communal ideology. So the Second Great Awakening was the time period in the early 1800s where there was a backlash against this age of reason and enlightenment, and it had very interesting result. Is anyone here Mormon? Anyone here a Mormon? You don't have to identify it if you don't want to. But does anyone know where Mormonism started? Anyone Mormonism? Does anyone know what Mormonism is? Let me take a step back for a second.
I've heard of it. No, I never really looked into it though.
They have a book.
I know
that-
it's a little
Right. So Mormonism is that started at this period, this Great Awakening. What happened was, let me see if I can find the video. Make life easier. It's really fun, better to have a video. If I can't, it's also good. I used to have a video on Mormonism. Let's see.
Someone claimed to find an ancient book that only he can translate, but then
Right.
I lost the book, but said that I have the translation of what the book said.
Here's actually. Here's this for a second.
The Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening was a religious revival movement during the early 19th century in the United States. It began in about 1790 and lasted till about 1840. It started as a reaction to the growth and popularity of science and rationalism, and to the growing liberalism in religion. Timothy Dwight became president of Yale College. Yale was seen as a center of secular thought, but Dwight supported sermons that brought religious revival to Yale's student body, and the word spread. The Second Great Awakening portrayed God as a benevolent and compassionate ruler who wanted salvation for man, rather than as an angry, vengeful God. The movement spread through camp meetings. It was during these camp meetings that you saw people speaking in tongues or having convulsive fits due to religious ecstasy. These physical signs and conversions further fueled the religious zeal that was consuming the country. Awakening.
People don't realize that upstate New York was considered like the most religious place, and they would meet outdoors, and there'd be these people who like really believed and claimed that God spoke to them. And there were thousands of such people, and there were preachers, and they were doing it was a lot of religion, but imminent religion. Not like, so again, very different than the Puritan very Calvinistic religion. Here you had a very sort of like spiritualism. And into that era came a person who claimed that God revealed himself for the third time. That means the first revelation was to the Jews at Mount Sinai, to Moses. The second revelation was to Jesus, in the year 20, 30, 40, whatever year it was. And now for the third time, he's revealing himself, and God's telling us what we want. It means it follows the pattern that people believe that in 1810 and 1820, God is speaking to humans in this world in upstate New York. Now, I know that for some of us, that sounds like doesn't make any sense, but everyone in the 1810s and 20s really believed that it's possible that God was speaking to people. So There's two. If you're interested, we're not going to watch it, but there's a very great. If you like musicals, the opening to the Book of Mormon is a song that starts "Hello." It's really great. So it's sort of brings it out. I'm not watching it. This is from South Park, which I know we really shouldn't be watching, but it's a cute song which brings up the point.
Testament and made lots of people shout. But what if I were to tell you that there's more of the story to hear? What if there's more Bible to read? Now I've got your ear. Just like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, the Bible is a trilogy too. And if you don't read or see part 3, it'll all be confusing to you.
A part 3 of the Bible? That's amazing.
Jewish people like part 1. Christians think part 2 is best. But in part 3, everything gets wrapped up and all your questions put to rest. Part 3 has all your favorite characters and lots of new ones too. And a whole lot more twists and turns, and every word of it's true. Just like Godfather and Terminator, the Bible is a trilogy too. And if you don't read or see part 3, it'll all be confusing to you. I'm gonna take you back in time to the ancient land of the United States, 1823. A little American boy named Joe living on a farm in the holy land of Albany, New York.
You mean the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith?
That's right, that little boy spoke to God.
He spoke to God?
And God said, Joe, people really need to know that the Bible isn't 2 parts. There's a part 3 to the Bible, Joe. And I, God, have anointed you to dig up this part 3, which is buried by a tree on a hill in your backyard.
Wow, what happened next?
Prophet Joe went up on that hill and he dug up the ancient book.
Okay, so I recommend you watch this video. It's a playlist. And by the way, this goes back to what we mentioned previously, which was a lot of people were confused about Native Americans. How did they get here? We spoke about this. One of the answers, remember we spoke about when the Menashe ben Israel, remember this from 2 classes ago, that Menashe ben Israel convinced many people that they were the 10 lost tribes. But again, if you're a Europe-centric or even an Asia-centric or African-centric, so it's a good question. Like, people lived there forever. All of a sudden, how did people get to America? Where did they come from? And by the way, till this day, scientifically, we're not really sure. Bering Strait, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Irrelevant. So there was in the early 1600s, there was this belief that these were the 10 lost tribes. The Mormons also played on this question, and they said also, that's they came and they escaped by Jesus. They didn't give a rationale how they got here, but everyone dealt with the problem of the Native Americans because living in America, and they were at this still point, the 1800s, they were still the majority of the people of the rest of the country. It was a good question. Okay, so this class is not a question of Mormonism. I just wanted to introduce it to show you what was going on in the Second Great Awakening and how, till today, 2022, the reverberations and the results and the ramifications of the Second Great Awakening still are with us. That literally another religion was created or was revealed, whatever word you want to use, because of this. What was going on? Okay. Do you remember we briefly spoke about the Crusades? The Crusades was a religious war between Christians and Muslims. Yet the Jews got caught in between. It means the Christians of Europe wanted to capture the Holy Land from the Muslims, because again, they were fighting over whether the Christian powers or the Muslim powers should rule over the Holy Land. And all of a sudden, the Jews got killed. So why would the Jews get killed if there's a fight between the Christians and the Muslims? The answer is that the Christians of Europe were like, why once we're already going for the infidels, the non-believers, the Muslims, well, we got all these non-believers amongst us, i.e. the Jews, right? This which is a real problem. So part of the Second Great Awakening was to deal with the fact that many Jews were amongst them, and they're like, interesting. What should we do about these Jews? And again, the point is, I want to show you something if I could quickly find it. If I could quickly find them. This is a little bit later. This is 1860. I want to try to get a little earlier than 1860. Let me see if I can find it. This might be it. Might not be it. There it is. Oh, I can't find it, what I really want, but no, I'll show you all the things that I have opening, but if you go to Wikipedia, you will learn about a group called the London Jew Society, or the London Society for Promoting Christianity Amongst the Jews, or the Church's Ministry Amongst Jewish People. And again, it was founded in the year 1809. Why is that important? Again, this is the Second Great Awakening. And a lot of Christians were like, wait a second, why are we spending so much time convincing ourselves or others about Christianity? What about all the Jews who live amongst us and they're non-believers? So part of the Second Great Awakening was, hey, wait a second, we've got to do something about all these non-believers amongst us. And again, it's not like there were so many, but in America and in London, this became part of the Second Great Awakening was, let's try to teach the Jewish people about Christianity. And I have this open here different. Let's look at this together. Does everyone see what it says there? Does anybody know where this building is? I'm going to read what it says. It says London Society for Promoting Christianity Amongst the Jews, Mission Hospital for Jews, founded in 1843. Then this actual building was 1896. It's got Hebrew. Does anybody know where this hospital is? I know that's, again, you don't have to know, but does anyone happen to know where this hospital is? I'm actually pretty sure some of you passed by this hospital many times. Anyone want to take a guess where that hospital is? Anybody? Nobody? Really? It's in Jerusalem. It's in Jerusalem. There's a street called the Prophet Street, or known in Hebrew as Hanavim. I tried to get it when I was there last. I tried to get a picture, but it's behind a very tall wall. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Obviously, has anyone been to downtown Jerusalem? Downtown Jerusalem. Do you all see my screen? I imagine you do. So right here. There. Let's see if I can. Let's move this way. Right here. You see where it says Anglican International School, Jerusalem? This was where the hospital was. And in fact, this hospital here, called Bikur Cholim, Bikur Cholim Hospital, was set up as a, as a foil or a counter to this hospital. Imagine you were living in Jerusalem in the 1820s and 30s and 40s. The only hospital was being run, and on the door it says London Society for Promoting Christianity Amongst the Jews. Would you go to that hospital if that was the only hospital in town?
If you had to.
It's a tough question, right? It's not a simple thing. Right? One of the reasons that they had to establish a Jewish hospital was because the other hospital had a mission to help Jews, but at the same time to help them spiritually, which wasn't always so welcome and accepted. And it's in downtown Jerusalem. That's where that is till today. So that was a little bit of a long introduction. The long introduction was that there was a second Great Awakening. Second Great Awakening caused that in the 1810s and 1820s and 1800s, whatever it is, there were many people who were Jewish who were challenged in their Judaism. Their Judaism was being very much challenged. And if you were living in America in 1815 and you looked around and you said, I don't see how Judaism is going to survive in America. First of all, it's not going to survive because there are very few Jews. Secondly, they're all uneducated. Thirdly, there's this great push by the masses of Second Great Awakening to try to convince and teach the Jews that they're all making a big mistake by not accepting Jesus. So this
Professor?
is what you get. This is what's going on in 1815 in America. And
Sorry, Professor, for interrupting. Was that the beginning of the Messianic Jews? The Messianic Jewish movement?
no, that's much later. Not at all. This
Okay.
was this is not Messianic Judaism at all. This is clear. This is trying to convince the Jews that they're wrong and they have to accept Jesus. It's literally, as it says here, it's the London Society for Promoting Christianity Amongst the Jews. It has not. When you're talking about Messianic or trying to showing that Christianity and Judaism. Hold on, I gotta give you 1 second here, sir. Hold on. Sorry about that. So, you can see here, Messianic Judaism is a whole different. We'll leave that for another time. Where were we? Okay, so this is what's going on in 1815. This is all like a very big background to a few people. We need that introduction. The Second Great Awakening, this attempt to speak to the Jews, the poor and bleak outlook of Jews and Jewish education and Jewish continuity in America. We need that to understand a few people and a few events. The first person I want to introduce. Actually, I want to do something interesting. This is a cute letter. I want to read this letter together with you. It's a very. Maybe I'll ask you all to read it. Hold on, let me open it. I want to read you a letter. Let's see if I can open it quickly. Okay, I imagine you all know who. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Yeah, you all know who John Adams was, but if you don't, John Adams was a second president of the United States. And he was a very smart man, a liberal thinker. And I'm going to introduce the person who he wrote the letter to. I'm going to introduce that second. Let's all read the letter together. If you could all take like a minute or two to read the letter on your screen. Again, it's March 15th, 1819, from John Adams to a man named Mordecai Emanuel Noah. I'll get to him in a second. Don't worry about that. I want to read the letter and tell me what you think about this letter. So I'll give you all like 2 minutes to read the letter. I have to, right? Okay? And no one should just read. That's the big challenge to the religion, when even your greatest friend like John Adams is telling you, I wish, if you go back to Israel, you'd become a liberal Christian and you'd realize that being Jewish is weird. So that's why that letter is important. So that's John Adams. So let's talk about who is Mordecai Emanuel Noah. Mordecai Emanuel Noah is another grandson of here's another picture. He's actually in our timeline. That's him, what he looks like here. He is another grandson of Jonas Phillips. Remember we introduced Jonas Phillips last time, 2 times ago. Jonas Phillips, very important but very minor player, but he ended up being a very important person. His other grandson was Uriah Levy. His daughter was Rachel Phillips Levy, buried in Monticello. His other grandson was Mordecai Emanuel Noah. Mordecai Emanuel Noah was the first, as you can see here, he held the first major position in American government. He was an ambassador or consul at Tunis, meaning, don't forget, this stage of history, Christians and Muslims didn't get along so well for hundreds of years, and it was considered a good idea to send a Jewish person to be the ambassador to a Muslim country, to Tunis or to the pirates or whatever it may be. And then there's a whole incident. We're not going to go into it. Whether he was that's him. he was removed from his post. Anti-Semitism, not anti-Semitism. And we don't have time to go into all of those. It's a good question. It's not so simple. And again, we're not going to go into it. Why is Mordecai Manuel Noah a very important person? Okay, and the answer is a very, very interesting answer. But to understand it, again, imagine you are a Jewish leader and thinker, and you understand that it's important to do something about this problem, the Second Great Awakening. It's important to deal with the fact that Jews are going to fade away in American life. So what would you do? It's like a very hard question. What would you do about it? Anyone? What would any good ideas? I know, like, I'm asking on the spot. Like, what would you do? Anyone want to guess? No guesses? Any guesses? Hi, everyone. There.
Education related? Try and start.
So education would be what we're going to see another time. That's one answer. I want to introduce you to his answer. This is Mordecai Manuel Noah's answer. Okay, I don't know how many of you had the chance. There's this wonderful place called Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is right here. And you can see it's right here. It's on the river. And on this river, there's it's a pretty nice island. It's called Grand Island. It's this island here. So the Niagara River goes around the island, and then you hit Niagara Falls right over there. This island, called Grand Island, was Mordecai Manuel Noah's plan to save the Jewish people of America. He said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy this island, and I'm going to turn this island into a homeland for the Jewish people. And don't forget, Palestine, Israel, whatever word you want to use, the Turkish, whatever, in 1810, 2030 was nothing. No one could live there. It was the Ottoman Empire. So no one had a real idea of going back there. So Mordecai Manuel Noah said, I have this wonderful, wonderful idea. I'm going to start a Jewish country, community on this island. And that's what he did. He actually went ahead and did that. And I know that's like crazy. Who does such thing? Well, he did. Does anybody know what he called it? I know this is like really like top notch. I'll tell you what he called it. Let's see if anybody can guess why he called it that. Mordecai Manuel Noah named this colony, this island, Ararat. Does anybody know why he would name this little? And here is, by the way, here is the actual stone. This is the foundation stone from 1825, Shema Yisrael, a hero of Israel, a city of refuge for the Jews founded by Mordecai Manuel Noah in September 1825 in the 50th year of American independence. Right, so this wasn't too long ago. I mean, it was, month of Tishrei, September 1825. So this is literally 193 years ago. Can anybody guess why it's named Ararat?
Ararat is more Muslim name,
Say that again.
is it? Is Ararat is a Muslim word?
No, it's a
No?
Bible. It's not a Muslim word. It's a Bible word. Anyone know their Bible? Where does the Mount of Ararat? Where in the Bible do we read about the Mount of Ararat? I'll tell you. I know you, right? You remember the story of the flood? And there was an ark. Who was on that ark? Remember his name?
Noah.
Noah. And the ark landed after the flood on the Mount of Ararat. So Mordecai Manuel Noah, get it? Named this city of refuge that the Jews are going to move to Ararat. He's Noah going to Ararat, just like in the Bible, Noah, after the flood, landed and stayed in Ararat. Okay, that's something very interesting. But why would he do this? Well, he was doing this because of this was his response. whoever answered education will get that's another response. But his response to the problem of assimilation, the problem of the Jews are going to be swallowed up, the problem that the Jews are are being targeted for missionizing and to convert to Christianity. The answer was to go and start his own little Jewish place. Does anybody know why there? Why would he pick this random island in the middle of nowhere? Does anybody know why here? Anybody guess?
Maybe because it bordered Canada, which was a British colony. So they had the option to switch from America to Canada or back and forth, depending on circumstances.
That's not a bad guess. It's unfortunately not true because don't forget he's an American. Mordecai Emanuel Noah is an American patriot. Like he works for America. His grandfather was Jonas Phillips. As you can see, the son says 50 years of independence in America. Would never ever want anyone going to Canada to the British Crown. No, he would be very against that idea. So just for the fun of it, just so we should learn something. This is in the ancient world, before railroads. So early 1800s, before there were railroads. How did you get from place to place? What's the best way to travel? So you can go by horse and buggy. What's the problem with horse and buggy? You know what the problem with horse and buggy is?
Well, the fact that it's a horse and it could die or anything can happen.
Yeah, and how fast do horses go?
Not as fast as a train.
Not as fast as a train. So if you're living in 1800s, what's the fastest way to travel? So on land, you don't have much choice. You got to go by horse and buggy. What's the quickest way to travel? By water, right?
Yeah.
Water. So let's say you were in Albany, and you wanted to get to New York. Life is easy. You have the Hudson River. You just go on the river. You flow down. You know, you'll be here way quicker than anything else. But so how would one get to Buffalo from Albany? So it used to be that took you forever because you'd have to go by horse and buggy. Someone came up with a great idea, and that great idea is called the Erie Canal. Does anyone know what the Erie Canal is?
Hello, everyone. The Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Halleck. To this day, it is still recognized as one of the marvels of engineering. 200 years ago, this week, construction began on what would become America's first superhighway, connecting Lake Champlain behind me to the Great Lakes, New York City, and the world.
Welcome aboard. The Lois McClure is a replica of the type of schooner that sailed the Champlain and Erie canals during the late 1800s. A ship built to resemble the shares the history of how the opening of the 63-mile Champlain Canal in 1823 and the much longer 363-mile Erie Canal just 2 years later were considered engineering marvels.
It's an incredible feat of engineering. You think about the technology available in 1817, the surveying that had to be done, the hills that had to be surmounted, the swamps that had to be traversed. It was largely done on the backs of human beings and animals that took the brunt.
What happened was in the 1800s, one of the greatest engineering feats was to create a waterway from, let's say, basically Albany all the way to Buffalo. And it's called the Erie Canal. It goes from here to here. If I can find, let me see if I can find your contributions. That's me. Go back out a second. My contributions. Photos. So this is, again, I'm a level 7 Google local guide, whatever that means. That is right. Well, why is it showing up? It usually shows up.
Isn't that restaurant awesome, by the way?
Yeah, I was just there. Yeah,
I love it.
You caught me. You caught me. And where is it? It's somewhere here, but I can't find it right now. I took a great picture and got a lot of views on Google. Somewhere here. I can't find it now. On the Erie Canal. I took a great picture. I don't think it's here. That's near there. I can't find it. I tell you, it was a great picture, if I may say so myself. Whatever, it's all good. It's not here, not here. It should be right here somewhere, but I don't see it. It was on the Erie Canal. That's my point. Not by House Cavern. I don't know why it's not showing up. Okay, it is what it is. Mordecai Noah was actually brilliant. His idea was that, and he was right. His idea was that Buffalo, after the Erie Canal was built, so there'd be a waterway Buffalo to Albany. There's a Hudson River from Albany to New York. So, and then once you're here at this water, you could travel all of Lake Erie and go to Detroit and Cleveland, and all these areas would open up, which is what happened eventually. So he figured, he's a smart man. He said, this area, this island, Grand Island right here, is one day going to be like the gate to the west. It's going to be the place where everyone comes through. It'll be a great place to start a colony, to run a business, to put Jews. And he was right, except that Jews were not randomly moving to Grand Island. Secondly, eventually the railroad took over, and then the whole idea, wasn't relevant anymore. But again, it was a very brilliant idea by this man, Mordecai Emanuel Noah. So that's another person you have to know. He actually, I have here in the handouts, here's actually his book. This was Columbia University. Thank you, Google, for scanning all these books. This is a Mordecai Noah discourse on the restoration of the Jews. He gave a speech about this. And again, we're not going to go through it, but again, that's what he looks like. That's Mordecai Emanuel Noah. There's the actual original book, Hebrew, English, Nachum, right? It's a very interesting book. It tells you about him, where he was born. Okay, all good and fine. And again, as always, he was part of the Spanish Portuguese synagogue. He's part of She'erith Israel, because again, that's just what everyone was in America, except for those people. Here's the discourse. We're not going to go into that. There's more about him. So, and again, he's the one. Now it makes sense. He's the one who John Adams wrote his letter to. And he actually wrote many books. One of the books was Travels in Europe and Africa, a very interesting book. Okay, that's Mordecai Emanuel Noah. Again, a person you have to know because of what he did and why he did it. And that's introduction. Okay. Now there are two things. Now let's for fun of it. I know I've been talking for a while. Let's have a little fun for a second. And again, I always like to apologize when I show you a video, and sometimes there's like a few things in the video that might be a little bit, I don't want to say off color or, I want to show you something. I want to show you one thing here quickly. But yeah, I'm going to show you something that's it's a little like not my speed, but you'll see what I'm saying in a second. This is
Here's a rare book, which has several things going on with it which are interesting. The first is this is a very early period binding. In fact, what's remarkable is that it's entirely untrimmed. These are the original deckled edges of the text block, but the spine was a calf or a sheepskin boards, though, and Jewish American.
So this is the other book I was telling you about, his travels in Africa. So someone did a video, they found a rare book and they spoke about it. So if you're interested, it's in the playlist. Okay, so again, I apologize for a little bit. It's a little bit off color, but it's a little, we'll do two things. Ready? So the largest volcano was in 1815. Was in 1815. sometimes world history changes not because of any historical forces or anything. Sometimes a natural event, call it God, call it nature, changes everything. So that we're gonna watch this again. Please forgive me for a little bit.
1816, the year without a summer. It's the most devastating cold spell on record. The weather indirectly led to over 80,000 deaths. But on the bright side, it also led to the invention of the bicycle. Thanks, disaster! So, how bad was the summer of 1816? First off, it was bad enough to get numerous nicknames. There's the summer that never was, the poverty year, 800 and frozen to death, the it's cold as balls in year, and hard Nipsapalooza 1816. I made the last two up, but you guys get the point. Secondly, it was caused by an enormous volcanic eruption. The year before, Mount Tambora in Indonesia blew its top and sent 200 million tons of sulfur dioxide gas into the stratosphere. The enormous cloud caused light from the sun to bounce back and mess with temperatures worldwide, especially in the northeastern United States, Canada, and Europe. Suddenly, it's snowing in June and there's frost on the ground in August. This led to bad crops, famine, death, and disease in both humans and livestock, which is where our friend Carl Dreyer comes in. He noticed the lack of poop, their horses on the road, and invented the earliest predecessor of the modern bicycle, the laugh machine, which, like 1816, had many nicknames: the running machine, the velocipede, the dandy horse, and the hard Nipapalooza two-wheeler. Okay, I made that one up too. But that means that bicycles were originally called dandy horses. You guys wonder why pro cycling hasn't caught on. His invention was one or two pieces short of being a modern-looking bike, but it got the ball rolling. And humans were pumping pedals, wearing spandex, and lying about steroid use in no time. So, thanks, disaster. And
So literally, it means crops didn't grow. It means that there was no food. It means that animals died all over. Means that that's why they have to go to a bicycle. And it also caused a famine. And when famines are caused, people get angry. People get angry when there's no food. People get angry and upset when life is hard. So in 1816, life in Europe, so that summer was bad. And the next few years, life in Europe was difficult. And as we said before, again, this is also, don't forget, this time of the Second Great Awakening. This is a time when there's a backlash against liberalism. So there's two factors here. One is there's just a backlash against liberalism. And at the same time, life is difficult. There's no food, there's no crops, there's no animals, and people are angry. So one of the things you do is you turn, I'll use the word conservative, you go back to the source. So there's a go back to religion, go back to conservatism. Change is bad. We really change is like, we hate change. And so this was what's going on in 1816. This had a very bad effect on the Jews of Europe. In 1818, there was in 1819, there was a lot of attacks on Jewish people. They are called the HEP riots. HEP. Did I lose my internet? No. Right? It's called the HEP riots. I think we'll watch this one.
Have you ever used a weird figure of speech and thought, I wonder where that came
from? Am I losing my internet? No, I haven't. So why is that?
Have you ever used a weird figure of speech and thought, I wonder where that came from?
Why is this not working?
Have you ever used a weird figure of speech and thought, I wonder where that came from? Well, I hate to.
Okay, so this video is not working, so we'll have to wait. But what's relevant to us is there were riots in 1818 called the Hep riots. What that video is going to tell you is that many people believe that the expression hip hip hooray is actually related to that Hep riots. The Hep riots were called that because the people who were persecuting the Jewish people would say the words hep. The belief is that it comes from the term Jerusalem, meaning Jerusalem, es perdita, is destroyed. So the rioters in 1818 in Germany, they were basically thrilled to get rid of the Jewish people, or more specifically, let me see if I can get my computer. So you're all with me? You see me? You're all good? Yeah. Besides, almost got a thumbs up from someone. You're all here. Hi, whoever's here. Someone here? Maybe some.
Yeah, I see you. Hello.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Making sure people are here.
Yeah.
The Chrome stopped working for a second. So in 1890, so let me go back one step. You all heard of Napoleon, I imagine. So we'll do this without videos. We'll do this without. We'll do this sort of sum up quickly. Napoleon, leader of the French, was liberal. He was the one who emancipated, he freed and the Jews and let them be citizens. That's a very big deal. Don't forget, the Jews of Europe for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years did not have equal rights. And when the French Revolution came along, right after the American Revolution, one of the things that Napoleon did in his conquers was wherever he conquered, he emancipated, he freed that the Jews can be a citizen. Now, it went with, at the same time, to be a citizen meant you had responsibilities. And so he brought about liberalization of Judaism, for good and for bad. Jews were equal citizens, but they also had to be equal citizens. And that's a topic in and of itself, and we'll talk about this when we discuss Reform Jewry, how it all started in a way with Napoleon. But that's a little bit jumping ahead of ourselves. So in the 1800s, Napoleon conquered a large portion of Europe, like really a lot of Europe. And that's great. And wherever he conquered, the Jews were emancipated. But then Napoleon lost. Now here's the problem, like we said before. Imagine you lived in one of the Germanic countries, and in your country, Napoleon had conquered. So when Napoleon had conquered, all of a sudden, the Jews were now all equal and free citizens, equal to everyone else. Now your government kicks out Napoleon. Okay? Now Napoleon's gone. What would your country do about that law that was on the book since Napoleon, giving Jews equal rights? You hear the problem? It's a big problem. In other words, like today, every time the Democrats or the Republicans, just without picking sides, pass a law that the other one doesn't like, what's going to happen when they take over the government? They're going to change it, right? So right now, the conservatives have the upper hand in the Supreme Court in places, and they made abortion, or they removed abortion from being legal. And if you're a Democrat, so then the Democrats control the Congress, and hopefully they'll pass a law that it's legal. And you're going to go back and forth. So a lot of the piece about let's play all this, what's going on. In the 1800s, Napoleon brings liberalism to Europe. The Year Without a Summer brings famine. The Second Great Awakening reminds everyone to go back to religion. It's a very bad story for the Jews of the Western European countries, what we call France and Germany. It was a perfect storm. They got rid of, once you get rid of Napoleon, like, we're sick of Napoleon. We're sick of famine. We're sick of all this new change. We're sick of liberalism. And one of the things they lashed out at were the Jewish people. And the most stark reaction was something called the Hep riots, I said before, where literally they rioted, killed, persecuted, removed rights for the Jewish people of the Germanic countries. I say the word Germanic countries and not Germany. The country that we call Germany did not exist yet. So today, if you go to your map, right? If you go to your map, and you type in the word Germany, which I'm going to do right now, if you don't mind, right? If you type in Germany, you get this area right here. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. This area is today one big country called Germany. But if you look, I'll just map it for a second. So if you open your map of Germany in 1800, let's see if you get it. Oh, here, right? Yeah, this is from Wikipedia, they're relevant. Let's open it up. You'll notice that it's actually not a country. It's one country. It's many, many different countries put together. So there's Hanover, Brandenburg, Königsberg, and there's even smaller ones if you go in here. Hesse, we said before, Bavaria, all of these areas, Westphalia, Prussia, all of these eventually became what was known as Germany. In the 1800s, each one of these was their own little like kingdom, and they had like their princes, or they had their castles, etc., etc. The reason I mention that is because we use the term Germany, but it's obviously historically incorrect. There was no Germany. There was Germanic areas under the Holy Roman Empire that were all like sort of like brought them together. But there wasn't one country called Germany. But when we say Germany, we mean that geographic area, which later on would become known as the country of Germany. Back then, there were many, many different little countries or kingdoms that were sort of independent, but they obviously were related in some way, shape, or form, religion and culture. That's, it's not a political science class. We'll leave that. So this is what's going on in the 1820s, and 1820s. So in 1818, there are these Hep riots, and that's why. And going back to this brings us back to where we started from in a way. This brings us back to. Hold on while it opens. This brings us back to this next period, which we began being the next period of Jewish history. The next period of Jewish history, as you can see from the bottom, they put it as 1820. That's the date's irrelevant, 1818, 1820. The date is that starting in 1820, it's right. If you looked at the world, right, only about 3,000 Jews in all of America. But in the next 50 years, they say 200,000. It's mostly 400, really 400,000. And again, as you see here, from the Germanic states, Austria, Bohemia, Hungary. Again, that's not names, because our names today are different than the names back then. Western European. When I say Western European, so if you look at Europe, we normally draw a line like right here. If you imagine drawing a line down, like this way, like in the middle of Poland, or by Warsaw. Imagine by Warsaw, you draw a line straight down. This part, meaning half of Poland, Austria, Hungary, Germany, France, is what's known as Western Europe. And then everything to the east is called Eastern Europe. And again, we don't have time to go through all of world history or European history. Suffice it to say that these areas were more liberal, were more advanced. And again, beyond what we could just, we're not here to discuss European history. In this time period, starting in 1820, because of all what I've described before, hundreds of thousands, 10,000s each year, but the next 30, 40, 50 years, hundreds of thousands of immigrants, Jewish immigrants and non-Jewish immigrants, but Jewish immigrants are going to leave here and come to America. The reason it makes a difference, as I pointed out, without it, the Jews of America would basically fall away. Without it, the 3,000, 4,000 Jews scattered throughout the colonies had no connection to Judaism. They didn't know much about Judaism. They had no leaders. There were people persecuting them in a religious sense, not in a physical sense, throughout the whole time. And if you looked at 1820 or 1819, 1818, you looked around and you're like, oh my gosh, there is no hope. There's no hope. There's just no hope. And again, back to our friend Emanuel Noah, he tried something, didn't work out. That is, you wouldn't be a crazy person to think that. But the way the world is, between the natural disaster which changed Europe and killed, right, between Second Great Awakening, between everything going on, hundreds of thousands of Jews came to America, and all of a sudden, and again, a lot of other immigrants came as well. So America itself became populated. So hundreds of thousands of people came, and that changed the trajectory of Jewish life in America. Okay. Has anyone ever heard of the B'nai B'rith organization?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what they do?
No, they're just very prominent. I've heard of them.
Right. It's actually one of the oldest Jewish organizations in America. And it was started specifically for this person. Here, let's look at it quickly. So it's founded in 1843. A funny organization. I don't really think fun of B'nai B'rith was started in the 1840s. There was no disaster relief. No one never heard of such a thing. No one ever heard of protecting human rights. No one heard of promoting tolerance, supporting seniors, advocating for Israel. There was no Israel in 1843. So what was going on? What was going on is very simple. In 1843, someone realized that there are tens of thousands of Jewish men, mostly men. Does anybody know why mostly men immigrated, mostly single men? Why would only single men immigrate to America? You don't want to guess? I know this. I'm gonna sound like my mother for a second. I don't know if she's watching. If you had to run away from America now, oh, let's not bring my mother into this. Let's say you lived in Ukraine, Russia. You had to run away. How would you support yourself? Let's say you had to run away from wherever you live. What would you do? You have to go to a new country tomorrow. What would you do? How would you make money? How would you eat? You ever wonder that? Or maybe only me as a grandchild of Holocaust survivors thinks of such ridiculous questions. No one here ever wondered that question? If you had to run away, what would you eat the next day? Okay, I guess it's just me.
Get a job and figure it out, I guess.
You'd get a job? Okay, that's lovely. What would you do? Where would you live? How would you pay for your lodging? How would you pay for food? I mean, this is a big problem. Imagine you're living in 1820, 1830. You're in Europe. If you're married with a wife and kids, first of all, how would you pay for the ship tickets to America? Second of all, once you get to America, where are you going to put your wife and kids? Don't forget, they're not working. So the first major wave of immigrants were men, and when I say men, I mean like 14, 15-year-old boys, single men, 14 to 20 something, because what do single boys need? Men need very little. They can sleep on the road, they can get a job, right? They don't have a family to feed, they don't have any, they can, back in those days, they can work, take care of themselves. So the first major wave of immigration was single men. Now, they might have been married, but they didn't bring their wives. Most of them were single men, 18, let's say 15 years old to about 25 years old. They came to America, and then all of a sudden they were all alone. And it's not fun to be alone, and it's not easy to be alone. Sometimes people need help from other people, so you form a group. You form like a club. B'nai B'rith literally means the Sons of the Covenant. Was the first organization. It was an organization of these Germanic men to support one another. It was the first. It was and this is also unique to America. It was secular. I mean, it was an organization for Jewish men, but it wasn't Judaism. It had nothing to do with religion, and nothing to do with the synagogue, and nothing to do with commandments or prohibitions. It was just a way for Jewish immigrants to support one another. Now, in the 2022 language, we'd call it a support group or something, something fancy word like that. Now, B'nai B'rith, that's what it was for the first 30, 40, 50 years of its existence. It wasn't a charity as much as it was the support group. Why was there need for a support group? Because you had all of these men. You had literally every year tens of thousands of single men who came to America because they were persecuted in Europe. B, there was actually a law that you might not allow to even get married. Could be that only one male per family could get married in Europe. So if you're a single male and you want to get married and your brother's already married, you're in trouble. Can't get married the rest of your life. So you run away to America. So you're a single male, you run to America, and all of a sudden, you could get a job. Now, what would you do? What would you do in America to make money? So you'd say you get a job. But what job? There are no stores. How did most people, again, Americans, how did most people in America support themselves? Anyone know how they support themselves?
Growing crops.
Right. You had to own land. You owned land and you grow crops. What is that? How about now? If you're an immigrant, what are you going to do?
You can work on
Work on the
Right.
The Industrial Revolution started around that time.
Sorry?
The Industrial Revolution. It was around that time.
We're a little bit too early for the Industrial Revolution. We're like 20, 30 years beforehand. So what are you going to do? It's a big problem. So there's an answer. The answer is very simple. Hold on.
To practice their religion and to flourish in the United States.
America meant possibility. By the 1820s, Jews from Central and Eastern Europe, who were often called German Jews, were fleeing to America to escape persecution and poverty. Soon, the Jewish peddler became a familiar figure all across rural America, just as he was in Europe.
It was the Jewish occupation in Central Europe for several centuries. And it was almost as though they had stopped doing that occupation in one place, got on a boat, took this long ocean voyage, and then they picked up the same pack and put it on their back and did it in America.
These were young men, 17, 18, 19 years old. They had a sense of adventure. After all, they had just, traveled thousands of miles across the ocean. Okay, so they go off and they sell.
The word is peddler. They were peddlers. The only thing you can do is go door to door or town to town and sell. And back then, there were no such thing as stores. If you needed something, you either made it yourself, you grew it yourself, or you paid someone to make it for you. What happened was, all of a sudden, the Jewish person, the Jewish teenager, the Jewish young man, came and was a peddler. He'd have this big sack on his back before he could afford a horse or a horse and wagon. And he would just walk around selling items to the locals. That's how he made money. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. I want to look in our book, if I could find it. If I could find it really quickly, see if it opens. Yeah. Well, I found it. Give me a second. Maybe not. So quickly. Here you have a letter. Again, this is from our source book, chapter 3, source 2, and a letter from one man to another, Charles to his brother August, talking about America. We're talking about selling. Yeah, right. What is, there's a lot of stuff here. You must know that whether your circumstances permit you to, right? Hold on. This is not the one I wanted. I'm not afraid I hope to take a position. I could also travel to buy and sell for you. I find a place having no wife or children to provide for. And this is, again, this is exactly what we're talking about before. Here's another letter of reasons for emigration from Bavaria. Oh, here it is. Here. Abraham Cohn, Reflections of a New England Peddler. This week I went with my brother from Boston to Worcester, Massachusetts. Now we are, right, I regret that the people here are so cold to immigrants. And then he's just walking up and down trying to sell something. Here it is. On Sunday, we stayed with Mr. Brown, a blacksmith. Right, I long for the beautiful days in my homeland. Last week in Plymouth, I met two peddlers, Lehman and Marks, meaning Jewish immigrants. We started seeing, right? So we were back, we know each other in the old country. But again, so he's writing, right? Dear mother, how could I recall your advice? Stay at home, you can win success as well in Germany. I would not listen, I had come to America. I was drawn by faith to hear him living a life that is wandering and uncertain. So here in the land of free, where every child, every human being preaches and enjoys liberties, I am compelled to follow a trade, to devote myself to so heavy and difficult a life. Every day I must ask and importune some farmer's wife to buy my wares a few pennies. A cursed desire for money is it you as it has driven this Bavarian immigrant to this wretched kind of trade. So it sounds like, oh, it's horrible, it's very bad. But the truth is, this is, you know, most of them we'll see next time became very successful. And yeah, a lot of good things. I would like to give, okay, so we're gonna end here. I would like to give homework, but because of Rosh Hashanah on Monday and Tuesday, it's a little unfair. So we won't have any homework. So with that, I'll wish you all a wonderful, happy, and healthy New Year. We have class next Wednesday. We will have class next Wednesday. For those of you like myself, I will be fasting, so it will be a little more difficult. But we will have class next Wednesday, 12:30 regular time, as far as I'm aware. And then obviously the week after that will be Yom Kippur. We will not have class. So we will have class next week, not have class the following week. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Professor, so much.